Hey, it's Amir and this is the Daily 10 segment of the Talent Tango podcast. I'm here with Arash,
Hello.
and today we're going to talk about how you can tailor communication for the people you want to connect with, right? So, some people like texting, some people like email, some people like talking on the phones, and it might not fit what we need in terms of, hey, I need to talk to you, but maybe you're having a dialogue another way, and sometimes we have to adapt to those circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, communication can take on a lot of different forms, especially now with technology the way it is. So I think understanding one, what's at your disposal, right? To leverage just knowing what technology you can best utilize is first and foremost. And then secondly is identifying and understanding your audience, right? And knowing how that specific person likes to operate. And it doesn't mean that that's how they like to operate 24/7, but you can definitely pick up on ways people like to communicate or prefer to communicate.
Yeah, I think like when especially if you're reaching out to candidates and it's difficult, right? In the workplace, they really don't wanna talk about looking for another job. They have to find a conference room. They're worried about what if somebody,
Is
walks in on
eavesdropping.
them,
Yeah.
eavesdropping. There's a ton of things. So a lot of times they want nonverbal communication. As recruiters, we have a series of questions we're always trying to get through, and we really wanna make sure we're as thorough as we can be. So we always want to talk to a candidate. And I think in the last, couple of years, I've noticed I'm actually doing a lot of stuff via text, like literally, working. Actually, I had closed a whole, I closed a whole candidate at a pretty significant position for a company without ever having spoken to him. And I mean, you spoke to him obviously, but the post on site to the offer acceptance, never spoke to him. Everything was via text message, and
And
we had
knowing this person, I would say that is probably the best way to have communicated with them. Not
deep
because
deep
they're not a
conversations,
nice
though.
person, just
Yeah,
because I think
he's busy.
exactly, and they
Yeah,
just didn't have time to
but deep
have a long
conversations.
conversation
Like,
all
I
at
mean, we
once.
would we would get into some philosophical points about why this job and not another, and maybe staying. So, like, I felt like yeah, it was a lot of typing. Fortunately, our phone system lets you text right out of your cell phone from a laptop or your mobile. So it was easier to communicate, but it was a lot of work to like make sure that that dialogue happened. But I was also thinking if I would have spoken to him, we'd had a dialogue, and then he would have had nothing to look back on if there's any like So maybe sometimes that offline, you never know, does help.
Yeah, I think it's really everybody learns differently, right? So I think if you're looking at it from that perspective, right? I think that's the same way I kind of look at communication styles. So for me, it's like I like to talk to people ideally, right? Because I want to hear the tone of voice. I want to hear if, you ask a question, is there a pause? Is there, you kind of want to feel them out. So for me, obviously, like in person typically is the best way to communicate with anybody. I would say on a, overall perspective, people would agree with that for the most part. But I think in our shoes or in, internal recruiter shoes, you're obviously not going to always get that first and foremost in person. Maybe if they come on site, you get them for that, 20 minutes, 30 minutes and try to kind of nail out a couple things. But I think it's really trying to learn how does this person kind of communicate and what's the best approach specifically for them. Obviously, you can ask, right? It can be trial and error based on kind of how you communicate through email, phone, text, and kind of feel them out. You could just ask them straight up, like, hey, if I get these type of updates, what's the best way to communicate? And they'll be honest and tell you, hey, like, I'm busy during the day. So maybe if it's during the day, and maybe you can even get that granular. Hey, if I get an update during the day, what I've found effective is just texting you since you're working after work hours or, in the morning before, I'm free these times. Are you free that time? So I think once you're kind of further along, right? I think definitely kind of knowing kind of their schedule and when they're more accessible in case you really do need to talk to them. I think that's really good tactic to use.
Yeah, so I mean, it also depends the audience, right? Like,
Yeah,
if you're recruiting salespeople enjoy talking.
they're chatty.
They enjoy it, so they probably
They
would get
if
on your
they're
phone.
not, they shouldn't be salespeople.
Well, yeah, a software engineer really busy with focus on code. He doesn't take a lot of breaks to talk. I remember. So this is the awkward part of this when you talk about, hey, do you have time to talk, and you have to go find a conference room. You can do that, but if you do that so many times in a day, people are not stupid in the workplace. They figure it out. Like it's a
Of
pretty
course.
if you've taken 4 calls in a day in the conference room, there is a good chance somebody's assuming you're interviewing.
That is the assumption. There's no
No, I did that. I
no.
was an engineer. I'm telling you, that was the assumption.
Well, no,
I
I was
can't
just saying,
imagine.
like, I mean, obviously there could be something else happening in your
Yeah.
personal life or
Not if it
family life,
happens, like,
but
if it's, like, consistent when you're interview when I was in interview cycle and there's, like, 3 or 4 or 5 companies you're talking to,
of
there's a couple
course.
couple rounds of interviews, and all of a sudden you're in the conference room chatting. I remember one of my coworkers goes, "Interviewing, huh?" I go, "Yeah." I mean, it was not hard to figure out because
Sure.
you're always ducking out, finding a
I don't think there
conference
was
room.
text messaging back in those days.
Very funny guy. Very funny guy. There was. It's just you have to use your flip phone and really type like all those extra letters, so it's not very conducive. So, but yeah, I think it's like sometimes your candidate understanding that a text message, dialogue, email, if they say, "Hey, email me the job description," it isn't because they don't want to talk to you. They just at that time and place, and sometimes it's after work. But I think sometimes understanding the audience again, understanding the limitation. Sometimes even with hiring managers, you're like, I have questions. I want to speak to you. Can you email me those questions they ask? And it's like, well, I could. And I guess, some because we're not, again, going back to another episode, we're not the practitioner.
Right.
You want to use some of your developed skills of
Of course.
interviewing. You want to hear all those things because you're leveraging some of the other, skills
Soft
you've
skills. Yeah,
developed.
yeah, they're hard skills now, but they're soft skills that you're obtaining from that conversation.
Yes. So you want the voice behind it because there's reasons you want that versus you could ascertain the same type of information, via an email, via text, but it's really the voice. But I think once you have rapport and you have, your candidate, then texting, literally is the easiest, least friction oriented means of communication for most of your candidates because they can pop it even in a meeting, they can pop up the phone and
Yeah,
take
and
a
I
look.
think I think leveraging a text to get a call scheduled is something. It's not just texting to text to get information, which is obviously something that I think more people should be doing and we do. But I'm also saying is, look, I need to talk to you. So instead of calling, just drop a quick text and say, "Hey, something's come up. We have a, update, an offer, something." Again, it depends where you are in the cycle with that specific candidate, but you can also leverage that as another form of a, hey, when can we chat? Not just to pass along information or gather information.
I mean, I think again, I think it's understanding the audience, understanding what works within their schedule as well. If I would have pushed that candidate to have said, "Hey, I have to talk to you," like if I'd have kept pushing, it might have alienated him. Like me being flexible, engaging via text messages for several weeks,
Right.
right? It probably allowed him to not feel the pressure. So I think
Agreed.
sometimes what we want as the recruiters, it needs to be secondary. And I think
Agreed.
sometimes because again, we've developed these highly, useful skills in terms of listening and asking questions, follow-ups. We want to leverage that all the time. And sometimes we need to understand we need to maybe adapt those skill sets to being able to do something similar in a different communication mechanism and media like text messaging, even old-fashioned email. It doesn't matter. It's just nonverbal, I
You
think,
can write
communication.
them a handwritten letter to their office. No, I'm joking. But
What are we, Game of Thrones?
yeah, we could get.
Put carrier pigeons or send the ravens
Hey,
out?
if it works, I'm down to try it. But no, I think
Be interesting.
it would be very interesting.
Yeah.
Like, get a little stamp. Uh, that would be fun.
A wax seal. On a side note, I really one day want to have my own wax seal just because I want to feel like I'm in, like, in the olden times, Harry Potter and Game of Thrones. It'd be fun.
That could happen.
Be nice.
You can order one. I think Amazon has
Yeah,
anything you want,
Etsy. Oh,
or that too.
that's it.
But no, I agree. I think it's knowing who you're speaking to, and the more you can be flexible and understanding that, yes, I want
Adapting.
X, but this person has a life. They have a life. They have an outside life. So yes, what they're trying to change jobs, and that's a big part of their life and a big stepping stone. But it's not the only thing going on in their life.
Yeah, and I think really the question is, are you guys adapting to your candidates? So are you working around what they need from you? Are you guys changing that need to have the conversation off and have it non-verbally so that you're accommodating your audience really?
I agree, and this is just about the communication mechanism. We didn't even get into
What and how?
exactly.
Yeah, more the how, not the what. But yeah, let us know what you guys do. I'm very curious how you're all adapting. I know we all text, but going nonverbal and being able to still get what you want done. And we'll be back. Thanks.
Bye.